Oh, hey everybody. I promised this video, and to be fair, I took some time to think about what I wanted to say. I didn't just dive into it right away. So, um, and I actually did a, a little bit of research. And I think, man, if I just had like the time, or if I like relied on my YouTube channel to like feed myself and feed my family, I would probably put so much effort into these things. But like cool effects and whatever's, and instead of just me yakking at the microphone here. But regardless, if you're watching this, thank you very much. Take a moment, do those things where you comment or subscribe or like or whatever. That would be cool. If not, oh well. And I'm gonna talk to you now about how I use lycanthropes in my D&D campaigns, my D&D sessions, and this is going to be like a way backtrack, right? Because I've been playing D&D since the 70s, because I'm old, and I started running D&D campaigns for my older brother and my friends, and my older brother and his friends. Probably in 1980 was like when I started. I would have been 9 years old, and in the last, I'm going to turn 54 here very shortly. So, if my math is correct, that is 44 years, 45 years. In the last 45 years, I've been playing D&D pretty much nonstop, constantly, and my ways of running D&D and other RPGs for that matter have definitely evolved over time. All right, so anyway, lycanthropes. I think they are easily one of the most misused slash underused monsters slash big bad evil guy enemies in lots of D&D campaigns. And I think it's just because, for lack of a better reason, they aren't as cool, right? They aren't as neat as a dragon flying overhead, or a troll that can regrow its arms, or the evil necromancer secretly plotting within his evil domain. We tend to think, when you think of werewolves, and when you think, what I mean, that's a good question. And maybe put that in the comment below. When you think lycanthrope, does your mind immediately go to werewolf? Does it go like me? I think of were-rats, and I'll talk about were-rats here in a little bit, and why my mind goes to were-rats. Do you think of some of the others? I mean, we started off, back in the day in this book. We started off with 5 of them, right? Werewolves, were-rats, were-bears, were-boars, and were-tigers. Inside this book as well, man, this is such a great book. I mean, check this out, right? This is my original monster manual, and I never removed the price. It's $11.99. $11.99. Probably bought it at a Walgreens. A Benjamin Franklin. Remember those? I think it was bought at a Benjamin Franklin, actually. But anyway, regardless to any of that, the $11.99 in like 1980s dollars, that must have been $1 million or something. Anyway, they had like jackalwares in there. And if you don't know what a jackalware is a weird, really, really smart jackal that can turn into a human. It was like the reverse. It wasn't a human that turned into an animal. Anyway, I'm already sub-referencing, and I want to try to stay on topic here. Okay, so we started off with five, and then we got a bunch more, right? If it's an animal that we thought would be cool that a human could turn into, we made that a thing. You know, were lions, were sharks. Were sharks are cool though. I'll give you. I had a campaign once where there was this old lighthouse, where this guy had secluded himself in this old lighthouse, and that was his job. And I remember one of the very first adventures the party that went on, they were told to go check on that guy in the old lighthouse. We haven't heard from him in a while. And they went out there, and of course he had been fishing and he had gotten bitten by a were shark and had turned into a were shark. And now he just didn't feel right about coming back to town because he was worried he was going to kill people. And they ended up becoming friends with the guy, and they didn't really know he was cursed at all for a long, long time. But anyway, totally all over the place here. Were sharks are cool. I think, I mean, then there's, like I said, if there's an animal that it would be cool if they could turn into, like a human could turn into it, we've made a were type of creature. I had a friend, again, total subset here. I had a friend who always named his characters Were, Were. And it was like, because he just loved the idea of lycanthropes so much, which was weird because I would see it in like his character's name is Were. No, it's Where. But I get it, right? It was just what he liked. So we started off with those five. We've got a bunch more now, and definitely the creatures have changed a great deal. From the beginning, I love the rules that were in the original Monster Manual. That if your character took 50% or more of your total hit points, actually the way it's written is actually great, because this is like back in the day, like we would never write things like this now, because I mean, I'm sure there's things out there that all do exist as far as the way they're written, but for the most part, like we would never write a monster here. I'm turning to my, like it says here, any humanoid creature bitten by a lycanthrope for damage equal to or greater than 50% of its total potential. Not hit points, just what is your potential, mercenary Jack Swordsman? My potential is to become king of the land. Okay, well, how do I do 50% damage to that potential? Anyway, but not actually killed and eaten is infected by the disease of lycanthropy. If the person is carrying belladonna, there is a 25% chance that this will cure the affliction if eaten within 1 hour. Note that this infusion will incapacitate the person for 1 to 4 days, and there is a 1% chance of the poison in it killing the creature. Otherwise, look at this. This is how tough it was to get rid of this. Otherwise, a cure disease spell from a 12th or higher level patriarch, like this, it's just great, must be placed upon the creature within 3 days, or it will become a lycanthrope in 7 to 14 days. And then it even says here, there are some other forms of lycanthropes, but these are very rare in the extreme. So it has the 5. And then, yeah, so there you go. Anyway, and then there's rules. I remember there was like deeper dive rules. I'm not going to dig out all my old rule books here. But there were deeper dive rules about like how often you change and whether or not you kept your mind and everything like that. But you can see, like in the old Monster Manual, oh my gosh, like if you got bitten, I mean, it just happened, right? I mean, I can remember an old AD&D game I was playing, and I had this cleric, who like took a ton of damage in a fight with all of these werewolves. And after all was done, the DM said, "Well, how much damage did you all take?" And the thing about it, I remember he actually said, like, one of the werewolves who was in wolf man form, like the standing wolf guy. He had a sword, and he was just hacking away at my cleric. And I took it, like I almost died. And he was like, "Well, you took a bunch of damage," and then I had to remind him, Hey, and the sword turned out to be like super magical, which was kind of neat. But I said, oh, no, 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 no. He did not bite me. That wolf was like stabbing me with the sword over and over again. And he was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I didn't have to roll. There was no chance of me turning into a werewolf. We did have one of the characters, however, did take a bunch of damage, and then we actually had to eat the belladonna. Like we actually like you'd have rules like that all over the place in AD&D. It was crazy. But you'd always have characters would be like, well, I'm going to buy some belladonna. You never know when I'm going to run into a thing. And then there was also Wolfsbane. You remember Wolfsbane? So the Wolfsbane, I think it was spelled. I mean, you'd run into it spelled with a U or an O for the wolf or wolf. Um, you'd run into that all the time. And what that was that if you could take it and hit a wolf with this herb or whatever, like meh, it would cause the werewolf, to run away. Like they had to run away, which was cool. Which was important, obviously, because lycanthropes can only be damaged by magic weapons or silvered weapons, which is why like that little silver dagger was always on that list, and why everybody spent like the 20 gold or whatever eventually just to have, just in case you have a silver dagger or silver tipped arrows. That was the other thing too, right? Like you had to make sure that you just had something that could fight them. Because if you played D&D the way it was supposed to be played, magic items and magic swords and stuff like that were supposed to come out. You were supposed to find them kind of slowly, if you will. Now that changed, and I'm not going to get into that at all, but you know what I mean. And there were lots of times when we would be playing and like you'd run into something that could only be hit by a magic weapon or a silver weapon, and you would just say, "I run," right? Or you try to get back to. I can remember one time I was fighting a gargoyle and I couldn't hurt it at all. I mean, it wasn't like back in the day. It didn't have like damage resistance. You know, like if you could just do enough damage, you could still do some damage, or I know, like in more recent versions of the game, they actually specify that like you can, if you can do enough damage, you can, or the damage that you do with like that isn't a silver weapon or whatever, uh, is like non-permanent damage, like it heals quicker or things like that. So that like and I get that we kind of put our mittens on a little bit in later editions, but again, I'm not here to talk about edition wars or anything like that because I think those conversations are kind of dumb and stupid. They're fun thought. They are very fun thought experiments, if you will, but they don't work really well as far as because it's stupid. Like the commandment of there's no wrong way to play D&D as long as everybody at the table is having fun, which can be applied to anything, right? There's no wrong way to play this board game as long as everybody's having fun. There's no wrong way to, you know, watch a movie as long as everybody. So it just that golden rule it is in place constantly. But anyway, the whole point of this is I'm trying to get to the point of why lycanthropes kind of just don't get used a lot, or I don't hear them referenced a lot. Obviously, because like vampires are cooler than them, liches are more cooler than them. As I said, evil necromancers, evil wizards in a tower somewhere are so much more cool on its face as a werewolf. Now, I don't think that. I think they're really cool, and I'll tell you why. And the reason why is that I change them a lot. I make them be way cooler in my mind. And I kind of do these. There are a few things that I make sure that I do, and I'm gonna kind of go through this list. Now, the first thing I do is I turn the whole thing on its ear a little bit, and I don't have the person that is the werewolf or the were-rat or the were-bear or whatever in human form. I don't make them look like a werebear or a werewolf or a were-rat. Like you always have this thing where it's like, oh, it's a werebear, so it's got to be this big, gruff mountain man guy with this giant beard, you know, and that obviously, if like he turned into a bear, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't do that. You just make them normal frickin' people that are just walking around. I don't make my were rats little sniveling, greasy cowards like hiding in the corner nibbling on cheese. I don't broadcast it to the party like that. These things are obviously weird in some way, right? You just make them normal people roaming around in the normal world. I was in a campaign once where I was playing a character. My buddy Craig was running it, and one of the people in the village like was a were creature, and it turned out to be like kind of a demon were creature. But regardless, it was somebody that was transforming at night and killing somebody in town, and we were trying to track this guy down in the entire and all over the village and trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And then when we finally had it kind of narrowed down to like one guy, we had this super spooky moment of like chasing him down in the middle of a cornfield and like trying to track him down and getting into a fight with him or whatever. But regardless, it was cool, and like, and that was a clue that led to this demon infestation and whatever. But anyway, he didn't make that guy like look like a werewolf. He was like helpful. He was kind. He was nice. If I remember correctly, he was like the local like leather worker or something like that. And he was always like super helpful and cool and everything like that. And he just hid his ability, which kind of goes into the whole thing of when they are in their human form. I make mine to be I almost like not evil, if you will, because you never know when you're going to have a paladin wandering through just saying detect evil, detect evil, detect evil, just like, and which I've always thought is a dumb stupid thing to have. And I've always, in my campaigns, and this is a little bit of an aside, I've always made it be, when they're detecting evil, like it is a even though it is a show, right? It isn't like casting a spell. I mean, casting a spell should never be like, casting a spell. Like, and casting a spell should be, I cast fireball, and I do the same thing with detect evil as a paladin. Like the paladin, you have to clutch your holy symbol, hold it up, and it's just like, by Crom, find the one that is, and that is among us that wants to do us harm, something like that. Where like if you do that when you're standing before the king and you're detecting evil in the room, they're gonna have a problem with it, right? Or if the person is evil, they're gonna be like, hey, stop that. You don't get to do that. Or they're going to have some sort of ward. So anyway, the whole point is that, sorry about that aside, but little hint, like if you run into problems where you have a paladin that just basically is always like, I detect evil. Oh, I detect evil. I detect evil through that door. Make it more difficult. Like, so it isn't so easy. But anyway, so if they do say to like my were creature that's hiding within like the town, and they say, "Do you mind if I detect your true intentions?" By all means, go ahead. And they detect evil, and because they're not in their werewolf form, you don't actually see them as the werewolf or whatever. So that's something that I like. I like to do as far as that goes. Make them a little bit tougher to figure out. The second thing I do is I make their animal form. Like I'm talking about their true animal form. I make their true animal form when I can. I make it seem docile. I make it seem normal. And the reason I do that is if your party is walking across a meadow and they see a big giant dire wolf, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's a wolf! Like that's huge and it has slavering jaws and it's going to eat us. We need to shoot it with arrows or something like that," and then it gives it away, right? But if you say like, "Oh yeah, you see a pack of wolves like on the outskirts of the forest as you're walking across this meadow, and they all are just kind of eyeing you and taking a look at you, and they seem to like just be keeping like as if they maybe they aren't interested. They're not like gonna charge and attack or anything like that, but they're just keeping their eye on you. You know, how many are there? Oh, there's like two or three. They're just sitting there and they're like, okay, you know, and 9 times out of 10, the party's going to be like, well, how far away are they? Oh, you know, they're probably about, 200, 250 feet away. They're just going to say, all right, well, as long as they keep their distance, no big deal. And they just move on with their lives. And so you can present a wolf or a werewolf in that way. You can present a bear in that way. Oh, you can see like there's a bear like rubbing up against a tree, scratching its back. You know, don't play him stupid, I guess. And there is one thing that one of the reasons why I really really like were rats is the fact that and this was a rule, and I don't know, I think it was 3.0 did this in D&D, and or maybe Pathfinder did this. Pathfinder first edition Pathfinder rules. I think that were rats were able to turn into a normal rat, which I have absolutely loved, and I have incorporated in every single edition of every single D&D campaign I've ever played since then. Now, normally, a were-rat turns into a giant rat, right? Giant rats are like one of the most common early monsters your players run into. You run into a rat the size of a large dog with big yellow teeth and disease foaming at the mouth, and you're like, kill it. And they love taking out giant rats. And giant rats, by nature, they tend to want to kill and eat low parties. It's just it's ubiquitous, and it's a beautiful thing. But regardless, tiny rats, like just a normal sized little brown rat that's like maybe 6 to 9 inches long, big giant weird fleshy tail, happens to be in a room with the party as they're checking out a mystical statue, trying to figure out, and there's just a couple of rats in the corner, maybe gnawing on a bone or something. Nobody's gonna care. They're not gonna be like, oh, kill the rats. They're gonna be like, oh, a rat. Okay, whatever. Oh, you see a rat in the village cemetery running around. Yeah, it's a freaking cemetery. It's like rats are gonna be in here. They're gonna have burrows. They're probably burrowing into the caskets and gnawing on the putrid flesh of the people that we're burying. Not much we can do about it, right? But if you talk about giant rats, like, oh yeah, they're gonna be like, kill the giant rats. But if you talk about, oh yeah, and you happen to, like, as you're walking down the alleyway, you see little rats, squeal as you approach and run off and into like little holes in the walls of the buildings around you, or as you're like going through the tunnels of whatever dungeon that they're walking through, if you see rats, squeal at the sight of your torch and run down the hallway. The players aren't going to care. They're not going to notice. They're not going to even. It's window dressing. But what you're doing is you're like, those are the spies. Those are the were-rats, like this handful of 3 to 5 to 6 were-rats that work for the big bad evil guy in that dungeon, or they work for the thieves guild within that city, or whatever. They are the ones that are keeping their eyes on the party and reporting back as to what's going on. And then you have a plot line, you have a reason, you have a setup where when the party does try to like break down the door or whatever of the thieves guild, main area where all the thieves have been, like, or the society of assassins or whatever they are well prepared and ready to go, because they have known that the party has been running around in the sewers for like the last half a day trying to locate them, and they're ready, and they are gonna just give the heroes exactly what they deserve for breaking into their home. And they're like, well, how is that possible? How did it happen? And then you just make sure in that combat that like a few like there's a like you have a rats like kind of run behind the that they don't really notice, you know, because oh yeah, you open the door and there's a room full of all these thieves who immediately shoot crossbows at you, and rats squeal when you run in, and they run off into the shadows, and then like round 4 or 5 of the combat, as the wizard spellcaster is preparing a big spell, all of a sudden, like right behind him, there's two, you know, giant rat like creatures, the hybrid rats, stabbing him in the back, and disrupting his spells. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, those rats! They were were rats the whole while." Obviously, you can't go to the well constantly with that, you know, because your characters are going to catch on. But it works for a very very long time. You can use that. Um, I also try to make it so my were creatures aren't just necessarily evil, like flat out evil. Worst of all, and that goes with any creature, like shades of gray instead of just super evil. Yes, there's monsters that you can just make. Yeah, it's just evil. And so it's just a you discover the troll, and your characters can just get the torches, boys, you know, and go to work. Uh, there are creatures like that that have that, but these are ultimately things where these these humans, these and I, another side. Do you remember as well as I do, like back in the day, like they said if an elf got lycanthropy, they just died. They couldn't turn into a werewolf or werebear or whatever. They just up and died. That was just how it happened. But anyway, um, backing up a little bit, these are, by and large, going to be people, or humans, dwarves, elves, whatever, depending upon the edition and what you decide in your campaign, that they have had the unfortunate situation of running into a wolf that almost killed them, a tiger that you know ripped them apart but left them live for some reason, a shark that happened to bite you when you went for a midnight swim by your lighthouse for some reason. You have these situations where all of a sudden now you're cursed, and you once every month during a full moon you maybe just don't control yourself perfectly, and you turn into something that is, you know, pretty horrible. But for the most part, you're able to control it, and you're able to control it, and you're able to control yourself, and you don't have to, you know, be that evil thing every single time. So what I like about that is I like being able to say, yeah, you know, think about that, where ultimately maybe because of their where they are in the world, I mean, they can't really, they have to live on the outskirts, right? Because they don't want to kill their families, they don't want to kill their friends, and then that anger over their life turning like this, maybe eventually does kind of turn them evil and dour, and maybe a little selfish and frustrated or whatever, and maybe, you know, them finally, you know, being brought to an end uh, by the party is something that you can uh, have a little bit of a catharsis moment there, if you will. The classic moment of when the party manages to uh, finally kill the werewolf, and as he or she slowly reverts to human form, with their last breath, looks at the players and thanks them for bringing an end to their torment over this curse that has afflicted them for years. And maybe it's one of those things where here's an idea for your campaign. I did this once where I had a really, really freaking evil werewolf who would go from town to town. And he was also a spellcaster, and so he was able to basically either put a townsperson to sleep, or basically hold them or paralyze them in some way, and then turn into his wolf form, nearly kill them, and then uh, leave, right? And so that they would heal from their wounds, and then a couple weeks later, without really knowing what's going on, they would turn into werewolf and they would start murdering the people in their town. And then the PCs like were called like saying, "Oh my gosh, this guy went crazy in the town. He murdered his family of 7 and he fled into the forest, and now like sheep are vanishing." So they go and they tracked him down and they killed him because they knew he was a werewolf. And when they went through his stuff or whatever, they found that he was keeping a journal, and he talked about this mysterious man in black that had come to his farmstead, and like with generosity they had given him uh, a place to stay, and in turn that guy repaid it by being malevolent and cursing this guy. And then they were like, we got to keep our eyes open for that guy. And then I just dropped it. And then 2 or 3 sessions down the road, they heard about this other adventuring party they knew who came in and said, yeah, there was like this thing where like these 2 sisters were turning into werewolves and like slaughtering people in this village. And then when we killed one, and then we captured the other, and she said that there was this mysterious man in black that you know had infected them with lycanthropy. And you're like, and then all of a sudden the players go, that guy, we got to find that guy. And then and then it kind of repeated like that slowly but surely, and then they eventually tracked him down, and they were able to put an end to this person that like just basically this mage who had gotten infected by a werewolf had he himself like killed his party members, and he was so mad and angry, like boink, like something went off in his brain, and he just decided, well, I'm gonna just send the world into chaos, whatever. And it was just, and it was something. So they finally tracked that guy down, and he was pure malevolent at that point, right? He deserved to die. He was doing things to kill innocent people just to sow chaos, and it gave the party this wonderful moment of catharsis when they were able to put that guy down. And he didn't thank them for ending his torment. He was to the bitter end. He was like, I didn't deserve this. This is not my fault. And like as they are like stabbing him with their silver daggers as they put him down, which I gave the players that. I gave them the like, okay, that felt good. That was justified, and it felt good to hack that person into pieces. But anyway, and that's the thing, right? I mean, so instead of using your werewolves and were-rats and were-creatures or whatever as just a monster in a room in a dungeon, there's so much more, right? Because they're humans. They're a humanoid. They, even if it's an orc or and that's a good idea. Like I remember I had a like in the one campaign I ran years and years and years ago, there was this huge hobgoblin army, and there was this elite troop of hobgoblins that were were-tigers, and like they talked about, oh, the striped region, the striped legion. You don't want to run into the striped legion, and like they talked about, and then like wherever the players heard about it, it's like, oh yeah, the striped legion. It's like they descended on that village and they just razed it to the ground. They didn't nobody died. They couldn't kill one person in that legion, right? Because they didn't turn into were-tigers. They went in there, but weapons couldn't hurt them. So they would just go in and they just wipe out a village because like people were like stabbing them with pitchforks and stuff. And so there was this whole story about like weapons don't hurt these guys. You can't do anything. You can't burn them. You can't stab them. There's nothing you can do. And so that was another thing. Like you just play with it. Don't just put, and this can kind of go with a lot. I mean, again, there are monsters that just work perfectly as a guy an ogre sitting in a room with a bag of gold. That's fine. It's straightforward, and your players will enjoy that. They'll enjoy just the satisfaction of, okay, here's a big giant tall 12-foot smelly thing with a club. Let's kill it and take his 500 gold. There's something wonderful and simple about that. But don't just put a werewolf sitting in a room waiting to die. Make something cool with it. Change it up. alter it, because they're humanoids. They're people that are smart. They're crafty. They have feelings. You know, make it feel real, and then your players will buy into it. Anyway, so I kind of was all over the place there. I appreciate you watching the video before this when I reviewed this book. So if you want to go check that out, that was the video before this one. Go ahead and check that out if you want to hear about werewolf fiction, horror fiction. But if you've ever done anything cool with a were creature in your D&D campaigns, or if you played in a D&D campaign that had something cool like that, post it. Tell me about it. Love to it. I love stealing other people's ideas. And feel free to take any of the ideas I've just had or I've explained to you here. Use them in your own campaigns as you see fit. Until next time, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Take care. This is the end of Viking saying bye.